With the success of Artemis 2 under their belt, NASA is carrying a ton of momentum into the next phase of their return to the moon. But that leaves a lot of us wondering, what comes next? Well, the answer is complicated, and it involves one of the biggest competitions ever staged between two titans of American industry. Artemis 3 will push NASA to the absolute limits of what they can achieve, because their place as the global leader in space exploration is no longer guaranteed, and the competition is moving fast. That means that we have a lot of work to get done in a very short amount of time. As soon as the smoke was clear from Artemis 2, NASA began assessing the condition of their mobile launch tower. It had been reinforced and beefed up following some heavy damages from Artemis 1, with the intention of drastically reducing turnaround times between launches of the SLS rocket. All of the critical pieces for Artemis 3 have already been completed: the booster engines, the upper stage, and the Orion spacecraft. So, it's just a matter of putting them together, and NASA is not wasting any time. But there is an extra complication in this next phase that's somewhat beyond NASA's control. In order to do Artemis 3, they need more than just the SLS rocket and Orion spacecraft. They need a moonlander. And this is where things get really interesting. So in 2021, SpaceX was awarded a NASA contract to convert their Starship upper stage vehicle into the human landing system for Artemis 3. Now, it's important to remember that at the time, Starship looked like this: a very early prototype that would launch itself a few kilometers up into the sky, then fall back down and try to land. Mostly, it would explode. But after one successful touchdown, SpaceX moved on to this, the Starship Super Heavy, a much bigger and slightly more developed prototype. Over the past 3 years, we've seen progressive iterations of this design complete a variety of test flights that send the upper stage into a suborbital trajectory and result in either the ship failing and coming back down in little pieces, or succeeding and landing itself on the water of the Indian Ocean. Generally, there have been more failures than landings, but it is undeniable that an insane amount of progress has been made, and Starship does get a little closer every time to becoming a functional rocket system. But there's a problem here. While being genuinely amazing and unprecedented in almost every way, progress on developing Starship into a reliable vehicle that can land safely on the moon has been slower than what Elon Musk originally promised. Now, in hindsight, that should have been expected. It's kind of a thing that he does a lot. So, in May 2023, just a few days after Starship Super Heavy lifted off for the first time and attempted to reach outer space, but lost control and exploded along the way, NASA awarded another moon landing contract, this time to Blue Origin, the Jeff Bezos-owned American rocket maker who at the time was famous for launching wealthy people to the edge of space. But just like SpaceX, they had big ambitions involving their own heavy rocket, the New Glenn, and a landing vehicle called Blue Moon. Space has always inspired us. From the first rockets leaving Earth, to the images of distant planets, to the missions still pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And that sense of inspiration doesn't have to stop when the video ends. That is where Displate comes in. This blade creates premium metal posters designed to capture what you are passionate about, whether that's space exploration, science, or the future of humanity. The prints are made on durable steel, so the colors stay vibrant and detailed for years. There are over 2 million designs available, including officially licensed artwork and original creations from artists around the world. And if you want something truly personal, you can even upload your own image and turn it into a custom metal poster. What I really like is how easy they are to set up. No drilling, no tools, no damage to your walls. The magnet mounting system takes seconds and you can swap designs anytime. It's a simple way to bring that sense of exploration into your everyday space. If you want to check it out, use the link in the description. The discount is applied automatically, or you can use my code at checkout. You'll get 26% off one display, 31% off two, and 36% off 3 or more. Start building your own space, one story at a time. So, this is where it becomes a battle of the titans, because in January 2025, Blue Origin effectively caught up to SpaceX by launching New Glenn for the first time. This was a mostly successful test flight, where their booster did end up exploding in midair on the way back down. But then in November 2025, they tested New Glenn for a second time, and everything worked according to plan. The upper stage deployed 2 satellites on a path to Mars, and the booster came down for a soft landing on a floating platform. So given the current state of this race between these two companies, NASA has decided that one or both of these moonlanders will be tested on Artemis 3. It all depends on who can execute on time. And that time comes in 2027. Now, here's what that looks like. Artemis 3 will begin much like what we saw on April 1st, with a new crew of 4 astronauts strapped into their capsule on top of a giant orange rocket. But this time, their destination will not be the moon. That doesn't mean that landing people on the moon has become any less urgent at NASA. They're actually in much more of a hurry than ever before. But it does mean that the path leading up to a moon landing has become much more clear and nuanced. For example, the old plan was to jump straight from Artemis 2, which we all just saw fly around the moon and come straight back home, and then go directly into landing people on the moon on Artemis 3. As far as knowing how they would actually complete the landing, well, they were basically just going to figure that out along the way and hope that it worked when they got there. Not exactly inspiring a whole lot of confidence when people's lives are on the line. So, the new plan for Artemis 3 involves testing out a potential lunar lander in space while staying close to the safety of Earth should anything go wrong. That means alongside the launch of SLS and Orion, there will be 1 or 2 additional giant rockets lifting off. For this example, let's stay positive and assume both lander candidates are ready to go, because then we can show you what it looks like in both scenarios, and that's pretty cool. The first thing to launch will be our moonlanders. That means a Starship and a New Glenn. They'll both need to deploy their upper stage lander into a low Earth orbit. Now, this is where the first big challenge occurs. Lunar Starship and Blue Moon are so massive that they burn an incredible amount of fuel just by moving themselves from the Earth to the Moon. So, before they can actually land, they need to refuel in space. Otherwise, they won't have enough to get the astronauts back up off the Moon. So, as part of Artemis 3, both companies need to demonstrate that they can successfully refuel a spaceship in Earth orbit. For SpaceX, that means launching a second Starship that will act as a fuel tanker. For Blue Origin, that means launching a separate propellant transport vehicle. So, now we get 2 more giant rocket launches, followed by an orbital docking and propellant transfer demonstration for both the Lunar Starship and the Blue Moon. Might not sound like a big deal, but no one has ever refueled a ship in space before, so doing 2 at once is a giant leap forward. Now, assuming that all checks out, it is time for the SLS to launch. This will play out the same as Artemis 2, except once the Orion capsule gets to space, it won't be heading for the moon. It will be setting course to rendezvous with their first lander. The first challenge is docking the 2 spacecraft. The lander will be autonomous, but Orion will have a pilot at the controls. This is actually something that they practiced on Artemis 2. There was a mock docking exercise where pilot Victor Glover steered his capsule toward its own spent upper stage engine. In Scenario 1, Orion approaches the Blue Moon from the side and links up with a docking port on the crew cabin at the bottom of the lander. The top sections are all just fuel tanks, and they'll transfer directly into the habitation module. It's not the most spacious interior, but if you look at a size comparison between Blue Moon and the old Apollo lunar module, you can see they are getting quite a bit more room to move around. Scenario 2 looks a bit different. The Lunar Starship has its docking port in the nose, so once the crew transfers through, they're moving directly into a big, wide open expanse of a 9-meter wide and several meter tall flight deck. There's a luxurious amount of space in there. Now, in either case, once the crew gets settled, they're getting down to business. That involves a thorough shakedown of the critical systems like life support, power, propulsion, and communications. They're likely to undock the landers, practice some manual control in orbit, and then redock with Orion. The point here is finding any fault that needs to be refined on the next iteration of the vehicle, the one that will actually land people on the moon. Remember that the original plan for Artemis 3 was to have people enter one of these landers for the first time while already in orbit around the moon. That is a bad place to figure out that something isn't working the way it's supposed to. But back to our testing scenario. While inside both landers, the crew will also be trying on their lunar spacesuits in microgravity for the first time. These are made by Axiom Space, and they're a totally new kind of suit, different from what NASA uses on the ISS, and different from what was used on the moon back in the D.